Hello and welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another video. Today we're going to be looking at Star Wars Squadrons. Specifically, we are going to take a look at the different starfighters and the different cockpits they have between Battlefront II, Star Wars Battlefront Rogue One, the VR mission exclusive to the PlayStation 4, as well as the upcoming Star Wars Squadrons game. I will also take some scenes from the movies to see how they compare in the game. The first starfighter we'll take a look at today is the iconic X-Wing. For most of the shots of the X-Wings, we get a camera facing back towards the pilots, and we can see out the back of the craft, there's a bunch of tubes back there. There's the engines in the background. We don't see a lot of the front of the aircraft. We will in a second here, but we don't see a lot, and when they do, it's kind of dark. I think it's because they didn't have a whole lot to put on these scenes, but they wanted to show you that they're going forward. You notice the light doesn't change. There's only that like weird plus sign or that cross section in the middle there. Otherwise, it's just a few lights, but not a lot of detail, especially in the first movie. In the next movie, we can see that the cockpit looks quite a bit different, and they show it for much longer with much brighter visuals on it, so you can actually see the details. We see Luke getting out of it, and there is just a lot of stuff going on in there. This looks much more interesting and much busier than it did in the first movie. I wonder if they got some criticisms for not showing enough. We're going to start with Battlefront II footage here. You can see that the X-Wing is beautifully detailed on the outside, but the cockpit is pretty lacking. Battlefront II is made for large-scale battles, and as you can see, there's lots of player vehicles, there's lots of space debris and effects going on, so they probably had to cut some of the detail out of the cockpits in order to throw so many polygons on the screen at the same time. While Battlefront II is a pretty game to look at, this is the worst example of the cockpits. Now we are looking at the interior of the X-Wing on the VR mission. You can see right away that there's a lot more detail in the console. It's also redesigned a little bit, but I'm sure that's just for gameplay purposes. This is unfortunately the only ship that we'll have a great comparison for, because the X-Wing is the only one that's modeled in the VR mission. And now we have some footage from Star Wars Squadrons. I did a spin so you can see the back of the cockpit. You can see there's a bunch of the tubes. If you look at the R2 unit, he makes a noise and your character responds to him. I like the frosted part of the glass, the paint all chipped. It looks very, very cool. You can also see that the cockpit again looks dramatically different than it does in any of the other games. There's a lot more going on here, but you also have the ability to fly just by your instruments. This means they had to add a lot of extra detail to show you your life, your shields, where your powers is going to each part of the system on your ship, what you're targeting, etc. It's pretty cool. I'm going to point out some of the details that's going to be common across all the different starfighters. The first one in the top left, that round green circle, is your radar. That'll show you where enemies approximately are, and when you're pointing at them, they'll show up in the middle part of the circle there. Next to that, you have the red lines that go across. That is for the amount of lasers you can shoot before they need to recharge. So they'll slowly go from right to left as they are getting depleted. Below that, you'll see a blue, red, and green set of bars. Those are to dictate your speed, power, and shields appropriately. If you decide to go for speed, the left column with blue, that'll give you the ability to do like a boost. And there is a set of yellow blocks to the left of that that indicates how much boost you have. The red bar is your weapons, and the higher you have that, the faster you can generally fire your lasers, and the faster they'll recharge, and you'll have a lot longer to shoot them before they get depleted. The last one for the shield will increase your overall shield in your aircraft if yours has one. So you can see in the top right, there's the green circle with your little X-Wing in it. There's two green half circles on the top and bottom of that circle itself, and the top shows the front shields and the bottom shows the back shields. You can actually change what side of the ship you want the shields on. So if you are coming at a ship that's shooting at you from the front, you can actually power your shields more in the front so that you don't have any in the back, but you have more in the front, so you can take more damage from that direction. To the right of the red bar for the lasers, you can see that there is a picture of like what looks like a droid with a repair symbol, and then a cone with 3 arrows going out, and then the one to the right of that is a missile with a 12. So those mean, starting from the left, that is the repair droid. You can switch any of these abilities out pretty much though once you get to the hangar, but by default there's repair droid, countermeasures, and then you have your homing missiles. Below the yellow blocks for your speed boost is the blue bar that has like a lower graduated cone going up to a square, and then it going down to the right side as well. That is indicating how fast your ship is going. You can actually completely stop if you pull the throttle all the way back, and if you get to that block in the middle, that is actually what's called the half speed, where you have the tightest turning and best maneuverability for your ship. Now we move on to the A-Wing, which there isn't much footage in the movies to go off of, so we're going to have Battlefront II and Star Wars Squadrons to look at. Starting with Battlefront II, we can see that the ship does again look well modeled, but the cockpit is very basic. It shows a picture of the ship itself as well as a yellow ball rotating in the middle there. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot going on. It's not very dynamic. It's pretty static as far as the instrument panels go. Jumping over into Squadrons, you can see that the instrument panel looks almost identical. Doing a little quick look around the cockpit here, this one is by far the least interesting inside because it's just mostly glass, but I wanted to just give you guys a view of the entire thing with a free look camera.
Another one for me.
Now we are moving on to the Y-Wing. This is the last of our alphabet-themed aircraft. I went through each of the movies to try to find the best scenes showing the cockpit, and it turned out that they don't really show you a whole lot of the inside of the Y-Wing. Now we're going to start with footage from Battlefront II. You can see that the aircraft, as always, looks really good from the outside. Jump to the inside of the cockpit. This is the least interesting of any of them. I take it back what I said about the A-Wing. There's no lights, there's no indicators or anything on any of the instrument panels. It's just a dead, dark cockpit. Now let's take a look at Star Wars Squadrons. This one is very animated. There's lots of lights and tubes and just detail in the textures here. You can see the pilot's body inside of it, which is true in all of them as well. You can see all the normal instrument panel, which we have for all the other aircraft. And you can see the target computer up on top there. My guess is when creating these models for the games, they either have some sort of concept art that was drawn for the movies or some other inspiration for this, because there is not a whole lot to go off of if we look at just the movies. Now it's time to take a look at the TIE Fighter. We see the aesthetic of black and red being very dominant here. This is because that is generally an intimidating color scheme. The pilot has a good view straight in front of him, up and down, but off to the sides, he doesn't really have much visibility. Here we have the exterior of the TIE Fighter. Then we jump to the inside and take a look, and like most of the other aircraft in Battlefront II, it's pretty basic on the inside. All we see is what looks like a stick or radar assembly up in the front, and then you're looking out the glass of the front. Now on to our Squadrons gameplay. We can see that the instrument panel looks significantly different than the movies and Battlefront 2. We can also see that the red and black aesthetic is very present here. You can see that there's a window on the top for the pilot to look out. We can see the pilot's arms and his legs sitting in the chair. The instrument cluster does have all the same functions as the other aircraft in this game, and just taking a tour around the rest of the cockpit to show you what it looks like. Now we move on to the TIE Interceptor. After watching The Return of the Jedi, I couldn't find any scenes that show the inside of the TIE Interceptor cockpit view, so I just have some scenes of the TIE Interceptor, and I'm going to throw up some footage of the TIE Fighter itself, because that's going to be very similar. On to our footage from Battlefront 2. Here we see the outside of the TIE Interceptor with its 4 wings. In the cockpit, it looks almost identical, except you can actually see the wings, and it shoots 4 lasers instead of 2. We notice that the interior is very basic, just like the normal TIE Fighter. Moving on to Star Wars Squadrons. And to no surprise, the interior of the TIE Interceptor looks almost identical, if not identical, to the normal TIE Fighter. I mean, they're based on the same internal shape, that ball in the middle of the wings, but you can see on the display there that it does show that we are flying the TIE Interceptor and not the TIE Fighter. On to our final starfighter, the TIE Bomber. Now we don't see the interior of the TIE Bomber in any of the movies, but in The Empire Strikes Back, we can see them in action bombing the asteroid looking for the Millennium Falcon. In our Battlefront II footage, we see the outside of the aircraft, and then when we move to the inside, it looks exactly the same as the first two Imperial fighters. We don't see any wings though, unlike the TIE Interceptor, but they are all essentially the same inside. Looking at the interior of the TIE Bomber, we can see that it looks very similar. However, you can see into the back of the ship as its fuselage is a little bit longer. If we look at the displays, those triangles, they're actually upside down compared to the TIE Interceptor and the TIE Fighter. However, everything else is pretty similar and unchanged. Hope you enjoyed our review of the various starfighters in Star Wars Squadrons and their counterparts in Battlefront and the Star Wars movies. So if you liked the video, please leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thank you. This is Ian from Wanted Saber, signing off.
Fighters are the most flexible and versatile, able to handle any situation.